Well, the Paladins Pro Circuit week number 2 happened this last week, and we had some really intense and really solid matches that came through. I'm really excited to be able to watch them, and of course, watching these teams evolve. I hope you are as well. So without further ado, let's see what happened this last week so we can try to figure out what we expect from these teams coming up in the future. The first match we had was Flashpoint going up against Chromaspace. Now, this one was one that ended up not living up to the hype that I had realistically living behind it. Chromaspace is a very solid team, and I actually expect to see a lot from them. They've been testing the waters right now and testing things out against some of these other top teams. And this week it was a triple support composition. They end up bringing no tank out. Then they brought a bunch of double supports. A lot of stuff that I think in theory can work, but in practice so far has not. And unfortunately for Chromaspace and Chromaspace fans, Flashpoint find this one 3-0. They actually brought out a really beautiful Tiberius on the side of Flashpoint as well into the set with that, and it looked really solid. They continue looking like a really strong team, and I expect to continue seeing them on that train upwards as we continue going forward. The next one, a lot of people would recognize Parallax Gaming, formerly Mandrakes University, Carnage Gaming, formerly Triunfo, going against each other. Freeze God and Mitau against Ares and Crimson. A lot of old top players in Brazil going up against each other. It should be an absolute banger, right? Well, not quite. It actually ends up going pretty fast in favor of Parallax Gaming. I think it just comes down to the fact that Freeze God and crew right now are mechanically playing better than everybody. They are doing so much more work than well, I don't want to say so much more work than everybody. They are playing harder. And that's the only way I can word it, is that they are just playing a little bit better. They seem a little bit more coordinated. And when it comes to these games, they're coming out on top. They are the team to beat in Brazil right now. And this 3-0 really confirms that, because Carnage Gaming, in my eyes, is the definite number 2 in this region. And the fact that it was a 3-0 means that there's a lot of catching up to do here to get to Parallax Gaming. Carnage Gaming do look good throughout all of this. And again, a lot of names you should recognize from the top level in Brazil. I just think we're going to have to wait a little while before we see them maybe take over that number 1 spot. A lot of other teams in Brazil, Carnage Gaming is their realistic target, someone that they might be able to take down. For Carnage Gaming, Parallax Gaming is their target. That is who they want to take down. It's just going to take a little while to get there. I'm excited to see how these teams evolve over the few weeks. Obviously, Parallax has nowhere but up to go. I guess technically they can go down because they're already at the top. Carnage Gaming can still shoot for that number 1 spot. I want to know what they're going to do in order to try to take it, and I'm excited to see Brazil as it keeps evolving. And in North America on Thursday, we had Flashpoint versus Team Project end up coming against each other. Now, in Vocal, Random Noob, Rubu, Vex, Doe, Rakata, Shadow, G-Bunny, Cuss, and Hero. It's a battle of the Pro League, baby, and everyone's living for it. This set lives up to that hype as well. That's the beautiful thing about it. Flashpoint come through as what I would argue are the favorites, but it only lasts them 2 games of control for them to have a little bit of shaky faith, I guess, from their followers. They do really well at the very beginning, and then Team Project wins game 3. And it's like, okay, well, we're up 2-1, it's no big deal. And then Team Project wins game 4, and it's 2-2. And now you're starting to sweat a little bit if you're on Flashpoint or if you are a fan of Flashpoint. And surprisingly enough, Team Project complete a full reverse sweep here and end up taking down Flashpoint. They find it 3-2, and they look good doing it. This one was probably the biggest surprise of this last week. This is the set. If you miss any other sets, you don't have to watch any of them. You can ignore them all. Just watch this one. This one was fantastic from top to bottom. Excellent play all around. This is what I expect from this pro circuit as time goes on, because it's nothing but up from here for a lot of these teams. And the fact that Project was able to find the upset here is what I'm going to call it. It means that we have a lot of room in North America for things to go A, wrong for a lot of teams, or B, maybe right for the others, and switch up the placing. And that's going to matter as we get to bottom 2 relegating out, top 2 potentially going to what could end up being a LAN. We have to figure out when and where that'll happen, depending on how things are going in the world. But this one was an amazing set. Make sure you watch it. The next day was Friday. We started off with All Business up against 5 randoms. 5 randoms picked up Nixus, and this is going to be a very solid team. This is a very solid roster with a very solid lineup. But it's definitely got to take some time in the oven to come out fully baked, right? They look good, but they don't look quite as good as All Business. They're able to take one of these maps, but All Business take this as a 3-1. The whole team on All Business plays well, and you know they play well because who got to shine brightest? That's right, one of the DPS players. Put him on a pedestal. It was Slopadopoulos. The fact that he is able to stand out in my memory of this set as one of the star players means that not only did he play well, but I think the team around him set him up for that success. Klosar, Toot Toot, the bodies around him enabled him to have a lot of damage and a lot of control. So it was very well executed from All Business and a very solid win for them in Europe. In Brazil on Friday, we covered Hivemind and OS Balamansa. And this, again, when I look at the names of Balamansa, when I see what they've accomplished in the past, I think it should be a little closer than it was. And that is to say, a lot of these games, I think actually every single one of them were 4-3s, if not maybe the last one I think was in favor of Hivemind, but it was a very solid fight from Balamansa. Unfortunately for them, the scoreline of the set doesn't reflect that because Hivemind, you know, a lot of people would recognize them as 5-stack esports from last year's PML. Well, they came through and 3-0'd this. They were very close games, and I think this is going to be something we see a lot in Brazil, where one team just maybe ekes out those maps a little more often. Veteranship from Hivemind gets them these wins, but Balamansa are on the rise, and they're a team to keep your eyes on as we go into the future. In North America on Friday, we ended up having Snappin' go up against HP OfficeJet Pro 6978, plus all those other words they add to the end. And, well, I mean, Snappin', Imos, Evil Eye, Flame, Bones, Woodknock. That's the names, but they didn't seem to show up, at least not this week. HP take this as a 3-0. Ralkion plays out of his mind. Penguin plays out of his mind. The entire team plays out of their mind. I could just read off their names night and day, but it was really well done from them. They find this one as a 3-0. Snappin', I want to see Snap into place, but it's going to take them a little bit, maybe a couple more weeks to figure out what's going on. As of right now, they have a solid roster. We'll just have to see where they end up. On Saturday, this match actually was not broadcasted, so if you feel like you maybe missed out on something, I'll go ahead and fill you in. Hayes had internet issues, so it was either Hayes or EeveeBot, depending on who you happen to be watching that day. And well, while it was an interesting one, I think, to maybe on paper come into, because I think Rasvet is going to be a very strong team, District 69 probably would have found this as a 3-0, but to begin with, just with much more flair. This time around, they find it as a 3-0 much more easily because, well, like I said, Hayes was only there maybe half the time, if even, as they came through. So D69 get the win, and hopefully we get to see them play and maybe push to their limits in the next couple of weeks. In Brazil, we watched Los Gatos versus Rau Esports. Now, I'm going to go ahead and preface this that the scoreline is very solid, but it doesn't reflect how close these games were. Los Gatos were able to find one game in a 4-3, and then two 4-3s in favor of Rau, set the score up to be 2-1 Rau Esports, winning. They were all in a row. And then Rau found a 4-1 at the very end. They played very well, specifically headed and not PS1, and Los Gatos were doing it without Mika. That's, I think, the biggest thing. This being a 3-1 just showcases, I think, where Los Gatos are going to be able to, A, pick up a lot of stuff, a lot of the things that they made, a lot of fixable mistakes that are in there. So they watch the tape back, they should be able to come back stronger. And B, it again shows how close these teams are in Brazil. You go back to Hivemind and Balamansa, I think that Rau and Los Gatos are fighting them for these bottom spots. You throw Carnage into the mix there, depending on how things are going, and all of a sudden, well, you've got a scramble for Brazil to try and be at the top. Of course, you're trying to avoid those bottom two spots. So I'm excited to see what Los Gatos is going to be able to do in the future, especially with Rau being able to find this win. It's very solid for them. We'll see how they do next week. The final set of the week, though, was way more lackluster than the names in this set imply. I think Full Send, Stigma, Ancient, Asdiff, Aspect, Vayne. A lot of history, a lot of strength in this team. But it wasn't there this week. I just didn't see it. They didn't play at the same level, I think, as you wanted to see. And Triple Deeps, on the other hand. I mean, guys, you're looking at Flashpoint and Team Project as potentially number 1 and number 2. Triple Deeps needs to be in there if you aren't already counting them, because they are making these teams and giving them a run for their money is realistically what I should be saying. They are absolutely dominant in North America right now. I believe one of the few teams who has not dropped a set just yet. They are ones to keep your eyes on because I expect a lot out of them in the next coming weeks, or everyone's going to be playing catch up. There's a lot that's coming out from them. They find this one in a very, very, very fast 3-0. I don't think any of the games went past 6.5 minutes, and I expect to see more of that in the future. But that is week number 2. Week number 3 will be starting this Thursday. If you're watching this on the day it comes out, that means tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/paladinsgame or mixer.com/paladinsgame, wherever you would like to watch. And then on Friday, it will be at 2 p.m., same place, Twitch or mixer.com/paladinsgame. And then backwards in time, Saturday, it will be at 2 or 3 p.m., depending on how many sets we have to broadcast that day. It'll be myself and Kresnik, Dave, and Finch bringing you all of the games, so make sure you tune in. But until next time, we'll see you in the PPC.